So today you're going to be learning all about the difference between teaching, tutoring, and group classes. And I've asked Cary Busby to come and join me today so that she can share a little bit about her perspective, a little bit about who she is. She's one of the members of our Ultimate Support Group for Online Tutors on Facebook. If you haven't joined us, definitely join us. Just go on Facebook, type in Ultimate Support Group, and you will find us. So hello, Cary. Glad to have you here.
Hello.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and the tutoring that you do.
My name's Cary Busby. I do mostly in-person tutoring, but partly online in high school math and science up through pre-calculus. I've been tutoring for about 4 years. And prior to that, I was a classroom teacher and did some other things too. So I love tutoring. It's been a great job change for me.
I know, me too. And we have a very similar background. I came from the teaching world, moved on into tutoring, and I feel like I have just found my sweet spot. Absolutely love it. And we had Akshata inside of our group who asked this question. She said, I'm wondering, how do you teach the same subject to different students in a group class? My group lessons are small, 2 to 3 students, and I go through entire AP syllabus with College Board questions, review the materials, get students ready for the school and AP tests. And in this case, she covers the syllabus, knowing that her expertise in that topic should be taught before the other one. But all of her students are coming from different schools. They're not on the same path as students. And so she was coming up with, some complications with that. And you really had a great response to that. And it was in response to the difference between teaching and tutoring. So when it comes to teaching and tutoring, what are some of the things that you notice that are different?
Yeah, so I think the center of focus is different. In teaching, the teacher decides what you're going to do each day. The teacher decides the pace, the teacher decides the focus, the teacher decides what's important and what's less important. In tutoring, I think that's flipped. I think the focus has to come from the student. Either the student asks for something or the tutor notices what the student needs that day. So tutoring different people who are in different classes can be really difficult because they need different things, probably. Whereas if you're teaching, you can decide what they need that day.
Yes. Yeah. And a lot of times teachers are provided with a curriculum. They're, the teacher has somebody else who's kind of overseeing them. Maybe it's a curriculum specialist who's kind of overseeing them and saying, okay, are you on pace with what you're teaching? Right. So they're kind of being watched to make sure that they teach all the same curriculum to the students that come through their path. But, I think as a tutor, our very big difference is, just like you said, it's flipped. It's totally flipped. If a student is struggling with something, we can be like, okay, show me how you're going about this. And let's see where the mistakes are happening. And while a teacher may do that when they're walking around a classroom, if they can, they may implement some of that kind of stuff inside of their lessons. But you got to imagine if you've got 20, 30, 40, 50 students in front of you. Right.
That kind of one-on-one attention is hard to deliver for a lot of time for each student because everybody could need something different that day. My students, even they come a lot from the same school, and even the different teachers are not exactly on the same page every day. So if I see 2 students who are taking the same course but from different teachers once a week, they're often not exactly in the same place. So what I find myself doing is more like tag teaming. Right. I'll tutor one and see what she needs, and then let her practice for a while and then work with the other one and see what she needs, because they rarely need exactly the same thing.
And are you doing, when you're working with 2 students at once, are you working with them online or in person?
That's usually in person. I'm not sure how I would handle it online. I think that would be even more difficult because you can't look over their shoulder and see what they're doing.
Yes. Now, there is a cool tool, and this would be useful if you guys do want to do those group classes, is there's a tool called Schoolified where you kind of can peek over and see what it is that they are doing, and you can actually check in with each student individually. So that's a cool tool that would work for specifically just that. Like if you have them working on something individually, I think for me, like I work with some of the younger kids. So classroom management, when I start to do group classes again, classroom management comes in big time.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, young kids, and I don't know if this is like, and maybe it's the same with older kids too, but like I find that it's harder to keep their attention online when there's a group of them, because you got one over here looking over here like this. They're totally not looking at the screen. You got another one spinning in their chair.
Yeah.
And
Not so much
like
with high school students, but yeah, a little.
yeah, they've got that cell phone that they just put right underneath so you can't see it, right?
Yep.
But you don't really know, and they're hiding it, and they're looking down, or they turn off their camera, or
Yeah.
you get, it just becomes a little bit more of, for me, a classroom management nightmare. And I hated
Yeah.
classroom management in the classroom. I don't know how you felt about it. Like
Yeah.
that was the
Same.
part that I hated the most. How about you?
Yeah. Yeah. It was not my strongest suit.
I don't want to be the person that is like, I don't know, I don't like being mean. I always tell my own kids, I'm like, I don't like being mean, mama. Please don't make me be mean,
Yeah.
mama. Right?
Yeah.
I don't like to be the
Yeah.
mean teacher. I don't like to
That's
be the
right.
person who has to like tell you what you already know you
Yeah.
need to do.
I feel like that it's knowing that tutoring is student centered though could help with that, because the student is there because they need something from you.
Yeah.
So again, I work with high school students, so with younger kids it's probably different, but they need to know this for the test, or they need to finish an
Yes.
assignment, or catch up from being gone or something. So if they're off task, that's on them. If they're not,
Yeah.
they're not practicing and answering and asking questions, they're not going to get what they need from their time with me. So
Right.
yeah, I feel like that's a benefit of working with high school students, is that they're a
Yeah,
little bit
definitely.
motivated differently.
They're definitely motivated differently, and I think that makes the difference between, like, the ages, and so it really comes down to, like, personal preference, I feel like, too, because some people, they just love being able to teach, like, larger groups of people. They love the fact that they can make more money by
Hmm.
having the larger groups. They love
Hmm.
that they can charge less for each student, and it
Right.
may work out fantastic. So you guys make the own decision for yourself. Like, don't be like, well, Joanne said or Cary said, right? We're just sharing our
Yeah.
perspectives on
Yeah,
the
if you
whole
just
thing.
realize, I think if you realize if you've got a group of 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people, what you're doing is more like teaching. You're going to have to choose what they all need that day, rather than
Right.
tutoring, which is figuring out what each of them needs and then focusing on that.
Yeah. Definitely. And I started thinking about this and like talking about the difference between group classes and tutoring with people so they could understand, because as a reading interventionist, I start off by doing an assessment for each one of my students and finding out where's the gap for you, because I can have
Hmm.
two kids reading at a second grade level with completely different needs. One
Yeah.
could be totally phonics based, the other one could be completely comprehension based. It doesn't matter that they're both reading at a second grade level. They have
Hmm.
different needs based off of what they're struggling with. So I start off with that assessment. And then I come up with a plan. I use books that they're interested in. I can't use that exact same process that I use one on one and group.
Hmm. Hmm.
Instead, I have to think about, okay, what is something that kids in, I don't know, second to fourth grade struggle with? Okay, it could be fluency. How could I create fluency lessons that meet
Hmm.
the group of, 3 to 5 kids?
Hmm.
That I can come up with, but I can't necessarily be like, I'm going to close the gap a full year with 8 to 12 hours of instruction like I do with my regular
Yeah.
tutoring, right? Like,
Right.
because it's
Yeah.
not going to happen. Can I help you become a better reader? Can I help you increase your fluency? Sure. It's a different process, though, that I'm going to go about doing that
Hmm.
versus the total like intervention, right? I have to think like broader. I have to think about,
Yeah.
what do I need to focus on? What do these kids need? Do I have a kid who's struggling with test taking skills? Great. I could do that in a group class if I
Hmm.
wanted to. I
Hmm.
have a kids that are struggling with vocabulary. I can actually even teach that inside of a group class, because I can have them reading their own books. I can have them pulling out 5 words from a chapter that they don't know the meaning of, look up those words, teach it to the group. I can
Hmm.
create that into a class, but I can't take my tutoring that I do and be like, "Oh, I'm just gonna now have 3 to 5 kids inside of my class,"
Right. Do you
because
ever have
it
some
doesn't
of
work that
both?
way.
Like, do you see kids in a group and then notice what's going on with each of them and then see them individually later?
I
could combine
have
the two
done
models
that.
together.
Don't enjoy it. Yes. So during the pandemic, I had a group of kiddos that they were all at the same reading level
Mhm,
and they all needed more time. And with the pandemic, I was like, you know what? They're my four toughest kids. They're all boys. They're my four toughest kids. And they're at the same place. Why don't I increase the amount of time? I'll do 2 hours with all of them. It's like some of them were only getting like a half hour of tutoring a week. I'm like, they need so much more. Like
mhm,
a half hour is not going to do it for them. They need so much more. I took them all together and a, I did 2 1 hour sessions throughout
mhm,
during the week for them. And again, I started running into some of these classroom management things, right? Where I would put them into groups to read with a partner, because you could easily do that inside of
mm,
Zoom. And
mhm,
then, one kid would be like, I can't get my book to open, or I can't get
mhm,
this to happen. And you're like, oh my gosh, again, I have to teach you how to open up a book again. Like every other kid can do it, but you just really struggle with it. So I would have like that group stay with me over here. And then once they felt good, I would like leave and like check on the other
mhm,
kids, see how are you doing with reading this book and getting the practice. And I would get into one of the other groups and a kid would be like, he's not reading his page. And I'd be like, oh my God, like
just like the classroom.
it really was like GTSD, it's coming back.
Yeah, sounds right.
I'm like, and I'm just like, do I enjoy that? Do I like that? Is that what like really gets, the juices flowing for me? And for me, the answer is no. There's
Yeah,
already a place for that in the school system. And so, a lot of teachers, when they notice a kid struggling, they then have the child tested, see if they can fit into an intervention at the school, and then they do those in small group.
mhm,
I feel like what
mhm.
makes me different is the fact that I do the one-on-one. I completely tailor the instruction now to the child.
Yeah, yeah, that makes
So
sense.
that definitely makes sense. What have you
Yeah, I
noticed with
really
yeah, go
well,
ahead.
I prefer one-on-one too, and I've had to make a choice it's a business decision.
Sure.
Am I going to maximize my income per hour, or am I going to
Yep.
maximize the impact I can have on each student? And um, fortunately, I don't depend on this as my full-time income, but I really do. I like individual tutoring better. I sort of like the
Yeah.
problem solving of figuring out what they need, what they're missing, what gaps they have from the pandemic or anything. And I
Mhm.
can really only get that by observing one student at a time, or sort of this tag team thing. If they're
Yep.
two that, they're in the same grade and they're friends and whatever, and they want to come together, that's fine. Um, but yeah, trying to, teach one topic to several kids at once, I don't think I would like that as much. Or
No.
I don't feel like I'd be able to benefit the student as much that way either.
And there are gonna be times, like, I'm actually coming up with a brand new program that I'm gonna be testing out with some students. And, I'm not sharing any details about it because this is a really unique UI idea. I've, like, looked online, "Does anybody else done this before?" Like,
Hmm.
and I have a big, huge teaching background, so I know what the best practices are in teaching. Let's just say I'm using a total physical response for a spelling program that I'm creating. And so as I was like creating this, I'm like, this I could teach with a bunch of kids online easily because they're going to
Hmm.
be moving throughout the process.
Oh, cool.
And I'm thinking I just got to put all the pieces together to make it work. And not only would find a lot of joy in it, but I know my students would find a lot of joy in that too. So again, it's like finding like sometimes it's about being unique. Like, how can you teach something
Hmm.
in a unique way that other people are not teaching
Yeah.
it?
And it sounds
Make
like you're
it
being really
fun, making
intentional
it exciting.
about it sounds like you're being intentional about creating it for an online group format. Like you're thinking about
Yes.
that the whole time you're developing.
Yep.
So yeah, since you've tried all the different ways, you
Oh,
know what
yeah.
works and what doesn't in that format.
Exactly. Now, it could totally work out to be completely different. Like, I could, like, get into the whole situation. I'm only gonna do it for 8 weeks for my first group of students that I'm gonna do it with, but it really is going to be, like, all of them for 30 minutes, and I could have up to 10 students using this process and using this method with a parent in the room or close by. And I
Hmm.
think that's, like, a big piece of it for me is that I normally, with my tutoring, I don't need a parent there at all
Mhm.
because it's online. I mean, if they ever want to peek in, they can see exactly what's
Mhm.
happening. I know intentionally, like I always look at it as I'm always being watched. So be your best self, right? And
Mhm.
so, but in this case, with knowing that I'm going to be teaching to a group of like 8 to 10 kids at one time, making sure the parent realizes, hey, you're in charge of classroom management, like just giving them
Mhm.
that job. And like,
Mhm.
hey, if you find that your kid isn't doing what they need to do, I may need you there just as backup to get them back on task, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And setting it up that way so that we can just have a great class all around. So we'll
Yeah.
see how it
Sounds
goes,
interesting.
you guys. I will let you guys know more about it as I develop it and all of that great stuff. But these are the big things to think about when you're tutoring, right? The difference between, and not all teachers can be tutors. I didn't know this. I did not know this. Like I
Hmm.
was actually dumbfounded when I spoke to a group of teachers and when I talked about this idea of being a tutor, they looked at me and they said, but like, how do you do that without a curriculum?
Yep.
And I was like, oh, I never realized that there are some teachers, they're so used to using the curriculum. They're so used to being told what they're going to be teaching. The whole idea of coming up with that for their students is just, they can't even fathom how to go about that. So just because a
Yeah.
teacher is good at teaching doesn't mean that they'll be a great tutor. And
Mhm.
just because somebody is a great tutor doesn't mean that they could be a great teacher,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
We
they're
just
different
happen to be
skills.
both, right, Cary? We happen to be
That's
both
right.
great at both.
Of course.
Of course. How about you guys? I want to hear from you guys in the chat. What do you feel like is your preference? Do you feel like teaching, tutoring, group classes is the best fit for you? Type it down and tell us why you think that. And thanks for joining us today. Great conversation. Thanks for joining us, Cary, and sharing what your experience is like. And thanks to you guys for watching. If you like videos like this, hit that subscribe, hit that like, and don't forget to join us inside of the Ultimate Support Group for Online Tutors on Facebook.